Okay, shaking it off. Our next presenter is political activist. Next presenter. Pleased to welcome a journalist, editor, speaker, anarchist, essayist. You'll notice he's been quoted a lot here. You know, really interesting, by the way. Yeah, that's proof of influence right there. He's been involved with cryptocurrency and Bitcoin since 2012, especially interested in the intersection of psychology and cryptography. He's written on behavioral economics in regards to innovative technology, and one of the first to write about the emerging field of crypto psychology on Bitcoin.com. All right. Please welcome Sterling Lujan.
Can you guys hear me? Good? So the first message is let's do whatever we absolutely can to help Miss Lynn Ulbrich and free Ross. We have to get Ross out of prison as soon as possible. So a little earlier, Jeffrey Tucker was talking about this idea of liberty and anarchism, and this idea that it's not just an intellectual endeavor. It's also something that we take into ourselves, something that we're imbued with, and then we live it. We live it as deeply and powerfully and as most profoundly as possible. And get this, before I ever had a word for what I was, an anarchist, I was dealing drugs. I was dealing a lot of drugs. Back in 2007 and 2008, I was peddling MDMA and cocaine. Primarily, it was MDMA, and during this time, I wasn't an anarchist. I was doing this primarily as an entrepreneurial endeavor. I was looking to get out there in the world and to make a little money. Nothing wrong with that, right? But that's not all. Prior to me starting to deal MDMA, I had taken the pill myself, and I had got to experience the ecstasy and the beauty that this particular drug has to offer. And after I took this drug, it totally blew me away. It woke me up to who I was. It allowed me to look at my past traumas, my past histories. It allowed me to introspect extremely deeply, come to terms with who I was, understand my traumas, and also learn about the concept of love. Funny thing, prior to my experience with MDMA, I don't think I ever truly felt love. Something about the compound allowed me to introspect and then realize that love is this very palpable emotion that some of us may not even have contact to until we enter into this altered state of mind or until we have some type of experience. So one of the questions that I started to ask myself after I had this MDMA experience, after I entered into this state of mind and had this revelation, I started to wonder, what is it about my nature that pushed me to want to sell MDMA? What was it about me that wanted to go against the grain and to be disobedient? And it was something about wanting to provide a service to people, wanting to help people, wanting to make sure that people can live their life to their fullest potential through the process of understanding who they are. It's the whole Socratic notion of know thyself, and that is thoroughly interwoven into the whole MDMA experience. So my goal, my modus operandi here, is to help provide you all with some inspiration on how to fully awaken to your true human nature. But also, because a lot of you already are, it's how to help other people awaken to their anarchist nature, to their full human potential, to this idea that we can do whatever we want to do in life so long as we're not harming others. And so long as we're truly impassioned by those ideas. It's just something that's so utterly important. Now, I have some fears that I want to share with you all in the hope that you'll empathize with me. Every day that I wake up and I go out into the world and I think about spreading freedom, spreading technological solutions to the problems of statism and government, I always worry about the possibility that we're going to fail at this mission because we're trying to do something absolutely momentous. We're trying to create a paradigm shift on a scale that no one has ever seen before. And this paradigm shift involves the absolute dissolution of the state apparatus and all of the intricacies involved in that destructive machinery. But still, there's this gnawing fear that we're not going to be able to accomplish this. And if we fail, and failing is absolutely not an option, it's possible that we would begin to live in a world of such dystopian terror that the likes of Orwell and Huxley would have never even been able to imagine. And you can see we've been drifting toward this nightmare shithole of absolute chaos and insanity. So that fear is there, friends, and it's there very palpably within me. And I think this is part of my nature. It's this drive to live as fully and as freely as possible. And I imagine that you can all share that drive with me here today. I also have another fear. It's this fear that we're not going to be able to work together to accomplish the goals of helping free people. It's the fear that we won't be able to band together, that will tear each other up from the inside out, that will devour each other through the means of not understanding each other, not connecting, and not being able to empathize with each other. And these are fears that I'm beset with every day. And I really hope that we can come to terms with those fears and continue to move forward, because failure in dissolving the state is not optional. It's not optional. We must succeed. So I'm going to provide you guys, friends, with 3 powers, what I call powers, for helping to come to terms with our anarchist nature and for helping other people understand our plight for this push toward greater freedom. Power number 1 is the power of storytelling and narrative. Who here has read a work of fiction and became enamored with that work of fiction? Yeah, like everybody would raise their hand. Storytelling is an existential plea for contact with another human being. It's the suggestion that I'm a relatable human being and I want you to understand my suffering, my pain, my trauma, and every bit of my emotional world. That is the purpose of storytelling. It's to make that deep contact with other humans and to share those relatable symbols and motifs and all the other information that comes along with that idea. So storytelling really makes up the crucible of everything that is human. It is our humanness. And if we can share our stories of anarchism, our stories of living a rebellious life, our stories of coming to terms with who we are as human beings, I believe that we're going to draw more people into this fold of anarchism. Storytelling is the animus mundi of everything important in our lives as human beings. It's the hero's journey. It's the path to freedom. It's the window pane into a new, beautiful world, friends. And if we can share our stories with people, we're going to expose them to a realm of emotional beauty that's absolutely unfathomable to so many people. And this realm of beauty is the anarchist realm I submit to you here today. It's one of the things I do in life. I travel to a lot of conferences. I do a lot of talking to a lot of people, but I always remember to tell my story. I talked about selling MDMA. I hadn't finished that story yet, but some of you can probably imagine where that led. So eventually I was arrested. I was kidnapped by state goons and I was held for ransom. And then I got lucky and I was able to hire an attorney who was on the corrupt side of things. Or is that all attorneys? Help me out. So this attorney was able, luckily, to help me escape getting in too much trouble. Got 10 years deferred adjudication probation, so I was in paper prison. Had people coming to my house at midnight watching me pee into a cup. Very dehumanizing thing. I can only imagine ending up in a scenario like poor Ross Ulbricht has ended up in. What an absolute travesty and tragedy. So storytelling, this is the most important thing I believe we can do, one of the most important, in helping turn the tide of the situation we find ourselves in. It's our stories that bring a new existential light to what we're trying to do as anarchists. Power number 2. I've already talked about power number 2 briefly. Power number 2 is the use of psychedelic compounds, entheogenic plants, and designer drugs for the purposes of waking ourselves up fully and helping to wake other people up. And I know somebody's thinking, well, are you ready to spike the water with MDMA and LSD and just get everybody loaded for a long time? Probably not the best course of action, since I'm a believer in consent. I think that people have to know what they're getting into, and I think harm reduction is an extremely important element of the psychedelic consciousness, of the anarchic consciousness. All of these things are of paramount importance. Yes, use psychedelics, but use them wisely and help people to wake up through our stories about psychedelics and through direct use. So I just want to talk a little bit about safety measures in psychedelic use, since it's so important. One, we have to understand this idea that Timothy Leary talked about called set and setting. When we use these type of compounds, we have to make sure our set is correct. The set is simply the mindset that you're in, but it's a bit more than that. It's a much broader. It's not just your mood and your mindset for the day. It's your past history, your trauma, your experiences. And all of these things have to be taken into consideration for engaging in a psychedelic ceremony, whether it's with a shaman or whether it's in the comfort of your own home. Make sure the set is on point. Make sure your mindset, make sure you're prepared for that experience. And number 2 is the setting. That's simply the environment you're in. Are you at a ceremony? Are you at home? Are you at a dance party? Make sure that that particular location is conducive to the experience. And here's why. Because these psychedelics have the ability to totally tear us out from this reality and show us a truer reality. And I think part of that is the reality of our deep self. When I took MDMA, which is a quasi-psychedelic, it led me through a path in the moment of examining my own life in some kind of unadulterated, disrobed way. And that's what woke me up to try to start actually living and to give a shit about my life and where I'm headed. So I am a firm believer, and always will be, that altered states of consciousness are a path to freedom. And in my mind, psychedelics will inspire us and inspire more people to create more communitarian environments where we share empathy, love, and connection. And we want to heal the world and then dissolve government in the process, because government is antithetical to healing. Power number 3. Power number 3 is technology. Technology is a sly little guy, because technology can mean a lot of different things, and technology can also be used against us as anarchists. It has been. The surveillance state has grown. Governments use tools of spying, tools of censorship, and various ways to undermine our goal as anarchists. But I'm a firm believer where we're moving in technology, we're moving toward a path of such radical, brilliant change that it's going to be difficult for us to imagine everything that's happening at once. And I think that it's going to take a step toward freedom and not toward fascism. But in order for this to happen, we have to make sure we make good choices when it comes to technology. Let me just give one example here so I can focus in on one thing. In order to enliven the spirit and get people to awaken to anarchism, I think having financial responsibility and financial control is of paramount importance. Income cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies are a technology that allow us to finally take control of our own money and keep that own money to ourselves to prevent governments, bureaucrats, kleptocrats, and all these nasty people from stealing our money, from freezing our bank accounts, from hyperinflating our money, and from utterly destroying society. Just like, thank you. My colleague, Matt Aaron, recently spoke on this earlier during Anarchist and talked about Venezuela. We see what's happened in Venezuela. Their bolivar is only good for kindling as fire at the family's bedside. That's it. And this is what governments essentially do to money, and they will continue to do this to money so long as they have absolute control to print it out as much as possible. So the new technology that allows us to get outside the scope of this and help wake people up to their anarchist nature is the ability to leverage cryptocurrencies and take that power back into our own hands. Now, when it comes to technology, we get even a bit more spiritually guided, I think, for lack of a better term. There was a technologist, actually there is a technologist by the name of Ray Kurzweil. Who's familiar with Ray Kurzweil? So he wrote a really popular book called The Singularity is Near. And one of Kurzweil's primary motivating ideas was this idea that we're going to create artificial intelligence programs of such sweeping intelligence that they literally start to transform the world before our eyes and everything starts to grow seemingly out of control. I had a vision that I call the Kurzweilian vision. Last year, here at Anarchist, I swallowed MDMA. Can you imagine that? Yeah. I swallowed MDMA. My wife and I, we went and set up on a veranda in the hotel we were staying at and overlooked the beach. And as I was coming up on MDMA, this time I started to imagine that the beach and everything was just a series of fractals, some type of a technological machinery that was building on itself, that was growing and growing and creating and building. And I realized, holy shit, this is the way that we're building technology. It's almost like some type of spiritual machine, something that Terence McKenna called growth into the eschaton, something that is radically transforming the way we live. And this was an insight that I had. I don't know how true it is. It sounds pretty floofy now that I think about it. But it reminded me that what we're doing with technology is the goal there is to radically induce more freedom. Now, what that freedom means in terms of technology could mean a lot of things. It could mean more freedom from government, which is what we want, or it could go beyond that and mean total freedom of consciousness, freedom of living, freedom to be, existential freedom. But nonetheless, I believe that all technological growth at this stage in the game, if we make the right decisions, is an inspiration for us all to awaken to our anarchist nature, to come to terms with freedom from governments and freedom from controllers and freedom from all of these other people who would seek to subjugate us and subdue us. And that, I think, is an amazing motivator for all of our future generations. So my time here is coming close to an end with you all. And as I'm concluding here, something comes up to my mind. There's a beautiful quote by an Indian philosopher named Jiddu Krishnamurti. And he said, "It's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a sick society." So what is going on in the context of the society that we live in is that it's utterly sick, it's utterly broken, and people are taught through the various channels of propaganda, indoctrination, and engineering to fall in line without questioning the status quo, without trying to move beyond the context of the system and live their own life. They are engineered to such a degree that they just want to be worker bees, compelled to move forward in lockstep, 1 foot at a time. And this is such a nasty thing to have to happen to people. So in my mind, this is really a war for the well-being of the human species. This is a war for our own spirit, for our own humanity, for our dignity and our decency. And if we can't take the power back and find ourselves as human beings and inspire more people to come into the fold of anarchism, we are doomed to failure, to loss, and to perpetual subjugation. And that's what we don't want. So I want you all to remember today the 3 powers, the ways to inspire more people and to fully inspire yourself to awaken. And that is the power of storytelling, the ability to provide our story and our narrative, to give people hope, to provide people with the hero's journey, your personal hero's journey, your movement into the depths of hell and your ascension into the lofty ladders of heaven. And power 2 is to leverage pharmaceutical technologies and entheogens to help aid in your storytelling process, to build you up as human beings, and to awaken your mind's eye to deeper understanding of yourself. Because it's deeper understanding of the self that allows us to move into the future without fear and with absolutely open eyes and an open mind. And it's a scary thing, because once you come to terms with who you are and your anarchist nature, it's dangerous. We live in a world where we're constantly talking about governments, and governments at some time have always been known to hurt, attack, harm anarchists. So we all have to be careful, but we have to push forward with these ideas. And then power 3 is technology. Remember, our technological spirit is an ever-evolving transformation of growth in society. Ray Kurzweil called it evolution by another means. So we must leverage technology to create these changes we need. So always remember, continue to push forward. Continue to fight. Remember to connect with your loved ones. Talk to them about these powers. Talk to them about how we can grow and change. Talk to them about what's happening to our world and the decadence of society, engendered by governments, engendered by politicians, and engendered by people who haven't woke up and who are possibly just evil, maniacal assholes who want to see the world subjugated. We have to throw the goddamn ring into the pit of fire and be done with it all so we can move forward with love and dignity. I'm not really sure if we're doing questions. I still have 5 minutes, if that's a thing. I don't know. Okay. Like a mic for the audience? Or, okay, somewhere a mic. Okay, this gentleman here. Yes. Yeah, we have to get him a mic. I can't hear anything he's saying. Not familiar. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. I've always known that through meditation and different processes of breath work, holotropic breath work, it's possible to tap into different levels of consciousness, but haven't heard about the cannabinoid aspect of it. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. He mentioned a method, I think it was Wim Hof, okay. So he mentioned a method that about tapping into the cannabinoid receptors using breath work and different other strategies or techniques to get into those mind states. I wasn't familiar with that method. So. Luke. The first thing that I would say is just be patient with your loved one. I think some people may be not interested right away, and maybe over time they'll become interested. But like I said earlier, Luke, you definitely can't force people to want to try psychedelics. It's a very, anytime somebody's asked me and got interested, I just explain them the information behind that particular pharmaceutical technology and then give them time to mule it over and think about it. I always recommend, if you have a loved one who's interested in these things and maybe will think about doing them, go to arrowwood.org. It's one of the best places for trip reports, and they provide a lot of information on the chemistry and everything behind the substances, harm reduction techniques, etc. So that's a good place, I think, to help. Arrowwood. Oh, we need a microphone. The question was, Luke asked if he has a loved one, a spouse, that is not interested in psychedelics, how would I go about, or how would he go about perhaps making them interested or getting them interested? So, okay. Probably one more question. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. So in my mind, people who are in recovery are, oh yeah, thank you. She was wondering what about people who are in addiction recovery, specifically for alcohol addiction? What can they do, besides the pharmaceuticals, or maybe the pharmaceuticals? So I think people who are in recovery, what's most important for them is having strong networks, having family support systems, having people to talk to them and help get them out of that mindset. And that's also a way for them to help themselves. If they know they have love and support, they will be able to overcome those issues. And that's how I've heard a lot of people have overcome it. But then, down the road, what I've heard is good for alcohol addiction, and I've never tried it before, is the ibogaine ceremony. Ibogaine is a psychedelic root bark from Africa that the Bwiti people use that allegedly helps people overcome various addictions, including alcohol, opioid addictions, etc. So that might be worth looking into eventually, but I don't know that that's recommended like right away during recovery immediately. Okay. So thank you for all of your time. I really appreciate this. Was a lot of fun. Keep pushing forward. Push forward.